How's it going, everybody? This is Rob Novakast back with another video, and this time we'll be doing a quick review of the 13 ghosts. Strangely enough, for some reason, the number 13 is in the word 13, which makes no sense, but I guess in some sense that was the point, or I guess the idea of kind of doing this. It was directed by Steve Beck, written by Rob White, Neil Marshall Stevens, Richard D. Ovidio. Hopefully I said that name correctly. And basically starring Tony Shalhoub. Hopefully I said that name correctly. Shannon Elizabeth, Embeth Davids, Matthew Lillard, Alec Roberts, J.R. Bourne, Rod Digga, Murrah O'Brien, and many, many, many others. Now, this one is, I guess to an extent, a somewhat intriguing display, especially when it comes down to the story, as well as, I guess, if anything, more so what the movie more focuses on is the house and the ghosts that are represented in the film. So without further delay, why don't we go ahead and get right into this review, going by, I guess, point by point, my own opinions of the film, as well as giving my final rating now, by the end of it. The story itself is actually really basic. I guess, if anything, talking about how, or I guess starting us off with how this rich individual who apparently is collecting ghosts dies, and after his death, everything goes to his nephew, who in some sense has just dealt or unfortunately was dealt a bad hand when it comes to life, when his wife tragically passes away, and with him and his kids needing a kind of a break, or at least a stroke of good luck, especially with this new inheritance, they go to their newly inherited house, and I'm using quotes, by the way, to try and, kind of put things back together for themselves. However, it turns out it's not actually a house, but a cage for or at least the variety of different ghosts that this individual, by the name of Cyrus, the rich guy, decided to collect and place in this home. Now, I think if anything, the main focus is, just the characters trying to escape, but also, I guess if anything, like discussing story, it doesn't really, I guess, display like a very pivotal story. If anything, it's very simple. But I will say to an extent, especially with it being like, I guess to spoil just a quick bit, something involving, Gateway to Hell or something like that. It does kind of, to some degree, share similar points that we saw in films like, let's say, The Nine Gates, where you have an individual who is trying to collect an object that is from hell, or is in relation to hell and the devil, and they have to use this for some kind of spell or incantation in order to gain either ultimate power, ultimate knowledge, or whatever, which is basically what happens here, which is why the ghosts inadvertently are collected from this rich guy, is so he can gain or amass ultimate power or ultimate knowledge. So to that degree, it just felt similar to other things. Above all this, I guess, if anything, if I were to give any good points about the story, it's more so of, the family trying to get out and trying to survive this whole experience where they're literally in a cage full of ghosts that unfortunately have died or have suffered through violence and like to inflict violence upon others. So all in all, story itself is, again, simple, but I think if there was any good points to it, it's, the fact that, you have the dad who is trying to, save his family, and just trying to find a way to get out. I will say though too that the movie itself abruptly ends, which I don't know. I mean, I will say this, especially with like after everything, I can kind of see that, but I kind of wish there was a little bit more, especially since by the end of it, um, I wouldn't be surprised if the family came across the this particular inheritance money that was left behind. Again, I don't want to spoil too much. I would rather have you guys go check it out for yourselves and kind of give it your own opinions. But all in all, it's just I've kind of felt like they could have done a little bit more with it. So going into characters, there's not much into characters because let's face it, you have quite a few people that are there. I mean, granted, there's a few nameless mooks near the beginning, but they all get killed. And then the main focus is again on the family as well as the only few people that are stuck in the house with them, as well as the Cyrus character. Now, I guess if anything, I want to talk about Tony Shalhoub, who plays the father character, and to an extent, especially with looking like some of his acting in the past, he's done I think a few characters that unfortunately has suffered from the whole dead wife syndrome in storytelling. And I will say that some of his, especially when it comes to his acting, he has this very nervous acting style, or at least when it comes down to emotional parts. A good example is, I guess, if anything, a good example would be Monk for that degree of like nervous acting or nervous, like, I guess, actions to say when it comes to movement. There's a couple times where it's emotional for his character, and there's moments where he's like kind of covering his face or doing certain things where you can tell he's uncomfortable, and he does a really good job with that. Tony Shalhoub, I will say, is funny when with certain films, but when it comes down to his emotional stuff, he does a really good job. Going forward, I didn't have much to say about the Shannon Elizabeth as well as Alec Roberts, because Alec Roberts basically is the kid brother or the kid son. He did fine to a degree, but again, I don't think I have much to say about the acting there. Catherine, only see a few besides her being attacked by one of the ghosts. There's not much about that character, as well as the nanny character, which was played by Raw Digga. Matthew Lillard, who plays Dennis Rafkin, or the psychic in the film, is interesting. Though, again, it's another situation where some of his acting is a little bit similar to other things. And no, I'm not going to reference the whole Shaggy style, or at least, if anything, how he acted in Scooby-Doo. He did a really good job in this, especially with, being, like, acting as, like, some kind of nervous wreck to a very large degree. All in all, I will say I enjoyed his acting. And going back to acting, or at least another character who, when it comes to their acting, I can't say much about F. Murray Abraham, who plays Cyrus, because, again, this is a character, I mean, obviously he's the villain, obviously he's a guy who is, like, full of himself. This is a character that, unfortunately, I didn't see much of, and I kind of wished I did, but we only see him from, like, the beginning to, like, the very end of the film. So, all in all, there was not much to say about that character either. Like I said, any other thing that we see in this film are more likely just, to an extent, lamest, like basically faceless mooks who will die. Now, if anything going further, I was kind of wondering if I should talk about this when it comes to effects, but I will, I guess, if anything, talk about this as well for the character section. That being the ghosts. The ghosts are probably one of the most creative things that we will see in this movie. There are about 12 of them, each having their own, I guess, if anything, their own unique design. Now, there's a reason why we have these 12 ghosts. I know it says 13 and it's explained in the movie, but each and every one, to an extent, is, I guess I got to give props to the makeup work for whoever did makeup, because each and every one is disturbing looking, to say the least. There is one that is kind of kind of painted in comparison to the other ones, but all in all, they're really cool. And for a lot of them, you really kind of can tell how menacing they are, especially with how they act towards our unfortunate victims of the house. But all in all, if I were to give props to characters, it would have to be towards Tony Shalhoub, Matthew Lillard, and the 12 actors who played as our ghosts. So all in all, really cool on those aspects. So first off, I want to quickly talk about the editing, especially when it comes down to certain segments, more particularly when it comes down to them showing the ghosts. There's this sort of like jump cut type editing where you have a lot of flashing imagery, or flashing image, I guess, if anything, where it flashes to an image where it just rapidly flashing. And to an extent, I didn't find that impressive. If anything, I found it irritating, to say the least, and somewhat disorienting, but more so irritating, where it just, to an extent, did not seem amusing in any way. I don't know if that was what they were going for, where you don't feel amused. All in all, I kind of felt like it was lazy to a certain degree. But going further than that, the ghosts themselves, as well as the makeup work and some of the imagery or design for the house, was probably my biggest point when it comes to effects. Makeup work was done really well for each one, and each of their designs, whoever did the art, like concept art for these monstrosities, did a massively good job with it. Each one looks impressive, as well as the house itself, where each room, or at least the rooms that we get to see or not see, because to an extent most of the house itself is basically just wall-to-wall glass panels with what should be Latin or Latin spells, I guess, is, all in all, it really intriguing, to say the least. And I will say that was probably one of my best like strong points of effects or editing wise. See, there is a bit of CG, but that's more so like for the end, and I didn't find it to be impressive, to say the least. And other than that, again, when it comes to makeup work and the design of the quote-unquote house, was probably my best, like the strongest point when it comes down to the effects department of this film. Unfortunately, there's not much to talk about, in the aspects of music. I will say that going further, when it needs to be dramatic, there are, like any other film, when it needs to be dramatic, it has its dramatic, I guess, if anything, points of music. When it comes down to the more mellow or more, I guess, melancholy, I think would be the proper word, or at least kind of calm moments, there are moments for that where the music is kind of slow and steady. But above all, when it comes down to music, I didn't have much thought of it. If anything, it is somewhat similar to a lot of other, I guess, music that I've heard before when it comes down to horror films. And that's an unfortunate thing when, music itself is somewhat similar to anything else you would probably see in any other movie. Alright, so final thoughts. And unfortunately, there is not much I can really do to kind of give this a high rating. the story itself seems similar to other things that we've seen in a lot of other horror movies. More so, especially when it comes down to the aesthetic of, collecting, a certain item to, open some kind of artifact or situation that involves the devil or the hell. The fact that, besides the ghosts, there were only two actors that were actually interesting to me to a certain degree. Besides the fact that, other than the effects, the effects and designs for the not only the ghosts but also the house, nothing else really, interest me when it comes to effects. In fact, if anything, when it comes down to certain edits for the ghost itself, when it comes down to showing them, were irritating to say the least and not amusing. The music itself, again, similar to a lot of other things, I can't, with good reason, give this a high rating. Again, there are certain things that I like, but at the same time, there are certain the bad kind of outweighs the good. So, unfortunately, I'm gonna have to give this 13 Ghosts a 4 out of 10. At this point, I want to give it a 4, mostly due to, again, the ghosts being good in both effect and character to a certain degree, as well as, the two actors. But other than that, everything else kind of dips it for those other points. So, with that, once again, for my review of 13 Ghosts, I give it a rating of 4 out of 10. It's below average, and unfortunately, it is not one of the best movies that I've seen. It has areas where it works, but at the same time, there are areas that are just bad and too similar to other things. And with that, that was my review of 13 Ghosts. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. If you guys can, please leave a like, comment, share, subscribe, all the good stuff. If you guys want to follow us on social media, links are in the description down below. As well as check out our daily content and the weekly podcast. With that being said, this is Rob Novakast signing off. Have a good one. Take care. And I will see you guys in the next video.